episode of the Sartorial Geek podcast is sponsored by Starship Therapies. Starship Therapies is a podcast that boldly explores all things pop culture, fandom, and psychology. It's hosted by Justine and Larissa, who take traditionally boring and serious topics and talk about them in a refreshing and relatable way. The show will leave you with concrete takeaways that help you better understand yourself and the world, and also create lasting change in your life, all within the power of fandom. If you enjoy these topics as much as we do, we cannot more highly suggest checking out Starship Therapies wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, welcome to the Sartorial Geek podcast. I'm Jordan Ellis of Jordan Danae, and I am here with Brett Strassner, aka DJ Archangel. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine. How are you?
Good. This is fun. We've never actually met or talked before. This was we found each other through the Kickstarter, and I'm excited to talk about you and the projects you're working on.
Yeah. I always like talking about stuff I'm working on. Kind of, I guess in a way, I've got an innate sense of being a hype man. I get excited about people I've met, things I've worked on, things I'm looking forward to. So
yeah, I was checking out your website, and there are a lot of very different projects and a lot of really cool related, but touching a wide variety of things. So can you give an overview of the kinds of things that you work on?
The kinds of projects. Well, as you said, they're kind of all over the place in a way that's sort of my natural state. I'm always kind of looking for tangential connections for things, so I tend to really reach out to projects and opportunities where I see just a connection between two groups, two people, two ideas that I think probably have not had too much exposure to each other previously. And of course,
yeah, I think that's really cool. That's kind of what we're all about too, is connecting people who have similar ideas or maybe could work together that aren't doing that already. So right. I'm immediately into that.
Connection is a very common sort of underpinning theme in almost everything I do. How do I connect these things? I mean, without being too corny, I guess maybe that's even what brought me into DJing, so many years ago is, you're taking two wonderful pieces of music and connecting them and seeing how they create sort of a new thing all by themselves. I know. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
I know a lot of musicians out there like to really hate on DJs, and being a musician myself, I mean, I came up as a drummer. I was in, drumline in band, and even did a little bit of stuff as a drummer in a band for a little while. So I mean, I did all those things too, and I have nothing but appreciation for live musicians. Or even electronic live performers. I don't think we are really competing for a space. I think that everybody's offering something different. Sometimes you want to see ballet, sometimes you want to see modern dance, sometimes you just want to see your kids recital or whatever. I mean, it's all different experiences for different reasons. I don't think you've got to rank them.
Yeah, no, totally. There's definitely room for everything. Is your nerdiness connected to music too, or are they pretty separate? Or
I think I bring a pretty heavy dose of nerd to whatever I do.
Cool.
Although we used to joke when a lot of my drummer friends and I would get together, we used to joke about something we referred to as lug talk, which was when the drummers would sit around and just really talk about what their drums were made of. Oh yes, I've got this Mapex shell and lugs made of whatever, and we're just oh gosh, I just like hitting mine.
Yep, that makes sense.
So, I mean, there's a certain level of geekdom that I fully appreciate, but I don't necessarily always participate in every single thing that I touch. I'm a scientist. That's actually a joke I had with the carbon dating artist. I think he referred to me as a scientist by day, DJ by night, world or something like that.
So that's your day job, being a scientist?
Yeah, I'm a physicist. Yeah.
Awesome.
Mostly physicist by title. I guess my academic pedigree is more mathematician.
Wow, that's so cool. So, I mean, that's nice to have something that's like totally separate from what you're doing day to day to do like as a hobby or do as your night version of yourself. Your alter ego.
That's how I look at it, is more like an alter ego. I think some of my website people are currently working on trying to spin like sort of an origin story for me or something. I just said, no, bios are no fun. Nobody cares where I went to school. Origin story is way more fun than a bio. I agree with that. So, I'm trying to kind of have fun with it, kind of sort of dance between the lines of actual information and just fun little fiction, because I think, honestly, and when a lot of it comes down to it, nobody cares, about little trivia bits about where I've been, or whatever.
So when did the like alter ego start? Like, how did that, what is the origin story, I guess? How did that separate project happen?
I'm not sure where it's going to end up going as far as the statement. She's still working on writing that. But I'd say the rough sketch of it, if you like the elements of truth, so to speak, would be it was back in '92, sort of the heyday of the rave era. I was going to parties, and I'd previously been in sort of like the punk scene, gone to shows. And so I was always, it was that vibe, that electricity of just sort of being part of, just this, just that happiness, that uplifting feeling. Even when you're, just slamming around and bumping shoulders with people, it's all good vibe. Everybody's excited, and just the atmosphere is just one of just community, and everybody's, sharing, this experience, and they're happy that you're there to, have this with them. And so my favorite place to go for those kinds of shows shut down. And I guess for a little while I was concentrating on more of my athletic pursuits at the time. I was a flatland freestyle bicyclist.
Whoa, cool.
I always choose things that have sort of an expressive nature to them. So I was kind of just mostly doing that for a little while. And then I kind of stumbled across the rave scene. I was too young to go to nightclubs. So this was kind of my only way to really, go to sort of a nightclub type atmosphere. And back then, it really was pretty grassroots. You just kind of go out to wherever. It could be a field or an abandoned armory or whatever. And, there was no real rave clique at the time, or at least not in the US. I think maybe Europe might have already gotten a little cliquey, but, you went there, you'd see, people who were goths and people who were, in overalls. You'd see, people in sort of Goodwill clothes. That's kind of where a lot of that old raver fashion came from, the real tight shirts and big pants. It's because they were fishing stuff out of the Goodwill,
Yeah.
Originally, that wasn't a fashion thing. You couldn't go buy that stuff at the mall. It was intentionally cheap and easy to come by, and a lot of it was sort of ironic before that became a thing. So people would wear gas station logo T-shirts and stuff because that's funny.
Right.
and nobody's going to charge you much for something like that, because why would you pay for that? And so a lot of it was just kind of silliness, party wear. Everybody was being goofy. And so when you went to these, events, everybody was there kind of for the right reason. Everybody wanted to dance and, hear whatever the DJ had to offer. Requests weren't a thing. you just watched what the DJ was doing and, just danced all night long. And then when you were tired or when they kicked you out, that's when you went home. So
that's where you got started, like wanting to do that.
Yeah. At some point I just said, I need to be more involved in this. And, there really are, in a lot of ways, there are only two ways to get involved. You either promote or you spin. There's all sorts of auxiliary stuff you could do, like, be the staff at the door or something. But that's, I guess that didn't jump out at me since I did actually have a musical background. And so I thought, this seems like something I'd enjoy, it feels a little symbiotic with the crowd, as opposed to being, say a musician playing original compositions. The crowd really isn't telling you what to play. But even as a rave DJ, you're still making your own decisions, and they're not telling you what to play, but they're leading you by their response,
right. You have to feel the vibe of the room, or else.
It's still
totally.
It's like you're still controlling the show, but you're kind of moving with the emotion, and you influence their emotion, but they also influence you back. It's a very shared experience. But it's a completely different concept from being a live musician. And I just wish they understood that, so they know that we're not trying to, tread on their space. There's a lot of enmity there that I wish wasn't, but it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, that's a theme in a lot of things that, in nerd space a lot too. There are a lot of battles over things that are like, do we really need to fight about this? Or can we all just be here for the same reasons and get along? So I totally get that.
Yeah. So at some point I did start kind of digging out a little space for me. And, for some reason, because I grew up on comic books and all that, for me, it was, there was no way I was going to be DJ my name. That's no fun. The whole idea is to kind of give yourself an alter ego and ham it up. If you're not doing that, well, gosh, I don't know. I feel like you're missing out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I toyed around with all sorts of names, and at the time, it wasn't real easy to jump on a web search and establish whether or not something was widely used.
Right. Yeah.
So I had tried a lot of other things, and when I spun on the radio, we'd announce these names, and I would just turn bright red, and I was just like, okay, that's not the one.
Right.
Clearly, that name makes me feel uncomfortable.
Right.
And so I went through a list of names, and then when I kind of settled on this one because I realized that, the sort of the motif of the Archangel and sort of how it could be portrayed in a dark way, it could be portrayed in a light way. So it had sort of a reflection of your mood, like where do you want to go with this kind of thing that you could flip any given moment. And across different mythologies, there are different sort of representations of them. So I thought, this one gives me some flexibility, but still a framework, so that it's iconic. And at the time, I didn't feel like it was really beaten to death. I was aware that, there's a Marvel character and there are a couple other characters, of course. It's an English word, there are going to be a few out there. But I wasn't, again, not trying to steal anything from anybody, saying, I think we can share the space. There can be a comic book character with the same name. I'm not trying to be him.
It's not as blatant as being like DJ Captain America or something. There are a lot of versions of that aren't just specific to one thing.
Right. Plus, Captain America, that's not just taking one English word that can be used to mean lots of things. That's pairing a couple. So it's pretty deliberate. If I infringed on that, would it be pretty obvious?
Totally.
But I think if I were say DJ Thing, I don't think everyone would instantly say, oh, you're clearly being that orange guy from the Fantastic Four.
Totally. Yeah.
So I kind of felt like I was doing something that wouldn't be a problem, and it would be a lot of fun. Plus, I had no aspirations that this was going to take off. I was just like, I'm just playing on college radio and stuff anyway. It won't really matter. And then, things kind of took off. I've had lots of things go on for me. I've played around the world. I stay pretty underground though. I don't think I'll ever be famous, but that's fine by me. It's
but your character has like I said, I was checking out your website before, and you're like, this character has been a part of so many projects, which is pretty cool.
Right. And I think and for me, that's kind of the fun of it is, I'm everywhere, but I'm kind of still in the background, and I'm still a little bit of people squint at it and go, I feel like I've seen that before, as opposed to, oh yeah, of course, that's Dead Mouse or whatever. It's like, instead they're just like, this guy, there's something.
It's just like popping up all over it. Yeah. So how did that work? Because we were chatting a little bit before, and like your character has been a part of like video games and board games and comics. Like how did all of those things happen?
Well, some of it is, happenstance, collaborations that happen here and there. Sometimes I just know people and I just say, hey, let's work together on something. And then a big chunk of them, will come through me contacting people through crowdfunding platforms and things like that. Sometimes I'll sort of approach them and say, hey, your project is a really neat idea. Are you interested in a cameo or a walk-on or something that might be kind of fun?
Super cool.
And then sometimes
that's such a smart thing too, because there are so many like new comics starting on platforms like that. Like that's a really unique and cool idea.
Yeah. And the way I look at it generally is, I get to have a little bit of fun with sort of a running gag of here I am again, sort of my own Stan Lee impression, I guess. And of course, in the meantime, I'm supporting them, because of course, I chip in as a backer or whatever. So, we both kind of get something out of it. And in the meantime, there's an ongoing relationship. Not always, some of them are just like, thanks, see you later. And then others are, I'm still in touch with. So each time I'm hoping to create a lasting connection. It just, it doesn't always work, but I still know how to get a hold of those guys. So if I ever see like, oh man, that one project would really be interested in maybe talking to this other guy or something, and I'll put him in touch, and then maybe something comes of it, maybe it doesn't. But generally, that's what I'm hoping is to, help create more and more connections, either through me or just because I happen to know two people who should know each other and stuff.
That's so cool. I love that. I mean, anyone who listens to the podcast or knows what Sartorial Geek is about, it's basically that. It's like being a network and a community of nerds in all different areas. And that's such a unique take on doing that I've never thought of. That's so cool because you're helping like people who are trying to get started, and that's amazing. And like, that's a really cool thing to do. And then also you get to do this fun project of like being in all these very, very different, being a part of these very, very different things, like, a new comic or a card game. Like, I just think that's really cool. That's a cool idea.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, you get to not only in some cases really help, but also be a part of someone's dream coming true. I mean, and to have that happen over and over, you couldn't ask for much better than that.
This episode of the Sartorial Geek podcast is sponsored by Jordan Dene. Jordan Dene is your one-stop shop for fandom fashion. We've got everything you need to put together a casual cosplay outfit or add a little geekery to your home. Our designs are all inspired by our favorite characters in stories throughout history and pop culture. You can check us out at conventions all over the country at jordandene.com and all over the internet at Jordan Dene NYC. So what are some of your favorite projects that you found through trying to do that?
I don't know if I feel right calling things out as favorites, but I
true. Okay, what are some memorable ones?
Let's see. I definitely some of the ones that get the maybe some of the strongest reactions when people find me are like there's a game called Mercenary Kings. It's sort of an homage to the old Metal Slug games. You may remember those back in the day.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
And I'm a hostage. So if you get far enough into the game, you actually locate my character and bring me back to your base camp. And
cool.
I just hang out there.
That's really cool.
And then I'm a trapped soul in this brand new game called Agony, where it's sort of a hell simulator. You kind of you're just wandering around, kind of trying to, I believe, escape hell. That one's really cool. That's a really heavy game.
Are these like digital games or board games?
Those are
both?
digital. Let's see. Cool. As far as board games, there's a game called Heroes Crossing, where I actually appear as one of the characters. It's sort of they do the way the game works is without explaining all the rules. Essentially, they have a sort of a little quirky aspect where when you're hiring heroes. The level 1 heroes are like 8-bit graphics, and then the level 2 heroes are 16-bit graphics. And
cool.
So they just kind of do that on the cards, and I'm one of the 32-bit heroes.
Very cool. That's awesome.
So that one's kind of funny because of the kitschy way that they went about it.
Yeah, I really like that idea. That's super cool.
And there was also one. See, I do this thing. It hasn't really done as well as I'd hoped, but I did this thing on Twitter for a while. My PR people are telling me I need to switch it over to Instagram. But I do this thing where I would do hashtag side quests. And the idea is I would essentially put a bounty on something like, hey, send me a screenshot of my character, of, you rescuing my character in Mercenary Kings. And then I'll give you a free Steam key or something like that. And so I was just kind of kicking out all these side quests, and people weren't really biting. I guess people don't like free games. Or maybe I'm just not famous enough and not enough people are seeing my thing.
I totally understand. It is hard to get people to see things you're doing. So I understand that.
So I got to work on the exposure part. But and probably so a few of those bounties are going to come right back up since nobody ever did some of the original ones. I remember one of them was for this board game called Jet Set, where you're sort of managing various airlines and things like that. And they made an expansion that added hotels at some of the locations. And I'm in that one, but not me personally, just sort of a hotel that's, themed on my themed on me. And so
that's so cool.
I put it out to the community again, like, hey guys, what should I call my hotel? And the only Twitter user that responded said Archangel's Love Hotel. And I said, it's a family game. I don't think they'll let me do that. So I had to change it. So I called it Archangel's Deep House because that's funny. And so that's the one that's in the game. I don't know.
That's so cool.
I sincerely doubt the game designers have any idea what that's about, but
that's okay. That's what happens when you do crowdfunding, though. You get, if you ask for input, then you just, you don't always know where it's coming from, but that's kind of the fun of it.
I'm trying not to give them Bodie McBoatface, but
Right. So how do you find the kind of projects that you get it? Because obviously you have to, you have to search, like there are so many.
I'm constantly crawling around Indiegogo and Kickstarter and Crowd Supply and, anything that has these kinds of platforms. I'm just crawling around looking at projects that interest me. If it doesn't have a Cameo tier or anything like that, but I think maybe it could, I might reach out to them. If it's not really appropriate and it doesn't have one, I might back it anyway. That's not like a condition of me showing support.
Like if it's something you think is really cool.
Right. So, I back tons of things that I don't appear in. But it's kind of whenever I see the opportunity, I'll reach out to them and say, here's what I have in mind. Does that fit your vision? Because ultimately the goal is they want to accomplish their vision. So that's got to be first. And then I just ask, do I fit into this? That
is so cool. I just love that idea. That's so awesome.
It's a lot of fun. And I like to believe that in the end, people people are happier that, that worked out for everybody. I generally believe that transactions should, have multiple happy parties as opposed to, one person got the better of the other or something.
That is definitely a good way to look at it. I agree with that too. That's awesome.
And same with like the Sympatholoid project. That one, I actually, to be perfectly honest, I've forgotten how I stumbled across them. It's been a couple years now. They're going through some revamping right now, so I think anyone looking into them might see various states of work in progress kind of going on right now. But my character is his name is, it's Osamu Tamotsu. And represents persistent depressive disorder. As far as I know, that had nothing to do with them, with my character in real life. I think they just assigned that one to me.
Explain this project. It sounds super cool.
Okay, so for those who aren't aware, it's based on the Vocaloid project, which I won't even pretend to be an expert on. I'm mostly just aware of it. So that's the most prominent member of the Vocaloid project is Hatsune Miku, an essentially imaginary pop star in Japan who uses artificially synthesized vocal banks to create her lyrics for songs. Because of her popularity, after she got put in so many projects, they eventually started giving her performances and tour dates and started treating her a little more like an actually existing person, including, as far as I recall, actual holographic shows and all that kind of stuff. It's actually, when they did that with, what was that, Tupac, I think they did over here.
And Coachella. I
remember that was, I even said, hasn't Hatsune Miku been doing that for like years?
That's such a cool, I mean, I had never heard of it before today. That's very cool.
So the idea with the Sympatholoid project is it's the same idea as Vocaloid, uses open source versions of the same software. And they get all the voicers in there to, create our sound banks. And then the idea is each voicer's sound bank is sort of, again, assigned to sort of a persona, just like Hatsune Miku. And then anyone who wants to use one of these voice banks is free to do so, as long as their project promotes awareness of mental illness.
That's so cool.
It's a wonderful, wonderful project. I wish I could do more for them. The best I can do is just make people aware they exist, because I'm sure sometimes they get overshadowed by Vocaloid and just resources. But they're there and they're great. I'm delighted to be a part of the project. And there's another thing that I've been working on. I originally called it DJs Without Borders, but I've been advised that maybe that name needs to be re-workshopped. So
what's the project?
The idea is in the Deep House Experts group we have on Facebook, there are DJs from all over the world, many who are producers, and many who are not. Those are two different skill sets. Hey, promoters of the world, those are two different skill sets. Anyway, so some people really want to promote more of their mixing work, their performance work, and so one of the things I thought would be really cool is, hey, there's this guy in, say, South Africa. They have a thriving and wonderful deep house community. I wish I could spend every weekend in South Africa or various other parts of Africa where they're just really just embracing deep house. But so there are people over there, people, in various parts of Europe and the US, Japan, in this group. It's a huge group. And I thought, what if I really wanted to do a collaboration, with some guy in Uganda. How am I going to do that? I mean, we're like almost a full day's plane flight away from each other. And, that would get expensive if it's coming out of our own pockets. And, promoters aren't going to foot the bill for that unless there's something, some kind of big to-do to be made of it. What if we just want to work together and see what happens? Or even more so, what if we wanted to include this guy in Canada and that guy in Costa Rica? Now this has gotten to, if we're not all mega famous people, this is never going to happen.
Right.
But that shouldn't stop us from reaching out to each other and sharing our creative ideas and being able to work with each other as if we were in the same room. So my idea was, like one of us gets the ball rolling, makes like a quick mix of 2 or 3 tracks, and then just takes that file and sends it to the next guy. And then he mixes some stuff into that, takes that file, sends it to the next guy. And we just kind of send it around, and it's a mix around the world without any of us having to have been able to be in the same room. So
that sounds super cool.
And it's, we're kind of still working with some software issues right now. But once that gets off the ground, I'm kind of hoping to put that on my website or something. Unfortunately, DJs are a little under attack right now due to some SoundCloud takedown issues and things like that. So that's another thing we're trying to figure out. Okay, where is this going to live once we get it fully produced? So people of the world who hear this podcast, if this ends up not happening, I very much apologize. But the powers that be were against us. We'll do our best, though.
I think we all understand projects that are awesome ideas and just sometimes logistically don't work out. So I totally get that.
Yeah. And
that's so cool, though. I love all these different ways to these are a lot of very, very different ideas that are all the theme of connecting things that aren't already connected is very cool to me. I really like that.
It's an important thing to me. In fact, there's this is another project that's still in its infancy. You've caught me in the middle of a whole bunch of stuff.
That's cool, though. That means a lot's happening. That's awesome.
I've been working on sort of my own comic book, but I'm working with another artist because, sure, I can draw and stuff, but probably not to the level that I would think really needs to be out there. So I'm kind of trying to reach out to some people to kind of get this done. And it started out, I will completely own up, originally it was a vanity project. It was just meant to be sort of a marketing ploy. But then as I started working through the idea, trying to get it kind of kitschy and stuff, I started thinking, this might have some legs. And the idea was I wanted to create the idea of the 4 housemen of the apocalypse. So it's, 4 sort of house music guys. And I already had in my head the 4 DJs who would be represent these ideas. Keeping in mind that apocalypse actually comes from the old Greek roots meaning knowledge. So it actually doesn't mean anything about destroying anything. So the idea was, you've got these 4 guys. And then I thought, well, okay, so we've got the 4 housemen of the apocalypse. We've got the imagery. Everybody gets it. But it doesn't really make sense that they're music guys, but they're like war and famine. I'm like, so that's silly. We got to come up with 4 other ideas. And again, because I have no problem with being unabashedly corny, I instantly it just jumped into my head. Plur! Ha ha! I grew up with this for years. So that's the old sort of rave creed: peace, love, unity, respect.
There you go. That's perfect.
And so I'd already kind of figured out who 3 of them were, and I just said, well, guys, this was my idea, so I'm unity.
There you go.
Everyone else may be way more famous and more deserving of this than I am, but it's my idea. So,
I mean, I understand that.
And I figured, well, also, I'm the one bringing everyone together, so in a way it does sort of jive. I'm just maybe not as famous as everybody else. Now, I will say at the moment, some of those big famous guys, they're a little confused by the project. So it may end up they're not going to get attached to big famous guys after all. And it may just be, okay, so these other three Housemen of the Apocalypse are just going to end up being not real people. And that's okay. I understand.
Yeah, that's cool to have an adaptive way to do it, depending on how it actually works out.
I have some level of networking, but I don't, I'm not dead mouse, so I can't necessarily just call up Daft Punk and say, hey, want to be in on a project?
Right. Understandably, that would be awesome, but I totally get that.
That's something I've been working on, and it's again a sort of a little kitschy thing to kind of give more creativity and ways to bring people together and join projects. So eventually, hopefully, that's going to also see some light of day.
Yeah, that's awesome. So because, there are so many different projects that you're working on right now, where, if someone listening wants to see what you're up to, where are the best places to follow you or see what projects are happening right now?
Well, I guess we're currently working on that. I am going through a little bit of update right at the moment. I've always tried to maintain that www.archangel.pro is the place to find me. I'm always there. It may be there may be things going on with the website as it's growing or changing, but I'm always there. Twitter.
So that's the best place to then find which links you're actively using and stuff.
Pretty much. That should be the most up to date of anything for me. Mostly because it's under my control. Ages ago maybe I would have said, "Hey, MySpace," and then it's gone. And then
Yep.
So eventually you have to stop saying, "Well, I'm going to send you somewhere that might be gone in 10 years," because I expect to still be around in 10 years.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I am on Twitter, and I do try to kind of post things that I'm working on, or like I said, I've got the side quest project. There's that, and then I am on Instagram, but I don't do much on there yet. I'll probably start changing that. I kind of avoid Facebook for this kind of stuff. In a lot of ways, I just see Facebook as more personal than commercial. So I kind of I do post music related stuff and event related stuff. I generally throw out an invitation to the entire world to celebrate my birthday with me every year. I offer, if anyone from some other part of the planet wants to come and resources are a problem, just reach out to me. I'll see what I can do to help out, So I kind of throw out the world party invitation every year. But other than that,
that's so fun.
Other than that, I keep it pretty personal, and just, talking to my friends. In fact, I think the only person who actively really maintains much of a DJ Archangel Facebook page is some other guy.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. And I totally understand that social media changes all the time. So just having a website where everything is updated, I think makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I'm also hoping sometime in the near future, I will be participating in podcasts a little more. Most of my stuff is a little more on my science end of things, but I work with a lot of training in medical imaging and all sorts of other things. So I may be having some podcasts that are maybe a little too nerdy for a lot of your listeners. But
yeah, I mean, there are definitely people who I'm sure that overlaps with. That might be a little too much for me personally, but that's awesome.
But I am. I have been slowly kind of increasing my understanding and stuff of a lot of streaming opportunities. Mostly I've been just sort of a passive viewer on Twitch. I'm hoping at some point to maybe go on that route. Once I saw that Twitch was a platform for things besides just, hey, watch me play a game. Although I feel like they're backing off of that. So again, it's like, just as I was starting to kind of get what they're doing, they're changing. So that's another problem, is sometimes you got to figure out, okay, where am I going to go that hopefully will be there long enough for me to do what I'm trying to do?
Yep.
So we'll see.
No, that's awesome though. I'm sure you'll keep your website updated as you like figure those things out. So
right.
That makes a lot of sense. Awesome.
And also probably this year I'll also be doing a little bit of a radio tour where I'll mostly be doing things, talking ideas and stuff. I don't know if there'll be much that's music related according to my PR team. But it's mostly going to be me just kind of doing more almost like talk show kind of stuff. It's a different kind of thing for me, but I guess that's something we're going to try.
That's awesome. Good luck with all of that. That sounds really cool. I'm excited to like see what some of these projects turn into. That's very awesome. And thank you so much for for supporting our crowdfunded project and for coming and talking to me today.
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So please go check out his website. We'll link to everything in the show notes. And then if you like this podcast and want to hear more episodes, you can subscribe. You can leave us a rating or review. You can check out our Patreon if you want to help us out that way. But thank you so much. Have a great week and we'll talk to you later.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.